turn now to the news that one of the country's biggest police forces, West Yorkshire Police, has temporarily blocked applications from white British candidates in an attempt, of course, to boost diversity. Well, joining me now is Shabnam Chaudhry, the former Detective Superintendent at Scotland Yard. Shabnam, welcome to the show. Always a pleasure to have your company. Shabnam, you've been very outspoken in your career and since you left the force about the fact you detest racism in the police. Don't we all? So presumably you're dead against what West Yorkshire Police are doing here, because clearly this is anti-white racism.
Well, West Yorkshire Police are using positive action to the point of selection. So it's completely different to positive discrimination, which I am totally against. But what I do know is that they are complying with the Equalities Act. But what I would also say that whoever they employ, regardless of their race, gender or background, that those people that are going through that process are vigorously tested and are actually selected purely on merit. Look, it took me 7 years and 4 attempts to get into the Metropolitan Police. So it was no easy task for me, and I was delighted to have been accepted. Of course, I had my fair share of challenges, loved policing, but would also challenge whether it's racism, sexism, misogyny, whichever, within policing, as I have done throughout my career and continue to do so.
But just to repeat, do you condemn this racism, barring white people, particularly British? No, hang on a minute. Barring white people because of their skin colour, which is a preordained thing we can't do anything about. We're born white, we're born brown, we're born black, whatever. We can't change that. And West Yorkshire Police have specifically said they are pausing the recruitment of white people. That's racism.
What they're doing is they're complying with the Equalities Act, the 2010 Equalities Act. And what they are saying...
Well, that's racist.
Hold on, if you look on their web... No, it's not. Well, if you look on their website, they are actually encouraging those from ethnic minorities to join policing. West Yorkshire, which is part of Leeds, Bradford and Huddersfield, has a 23% makeup of minority communities. They only actually have 9% within the force. Between 2023
but anybody could apply.
Let me finish.
Anybody can apply to be a copper. There's no barrier to applying. In fact, well, there is now. There's a barrier if you're white.
I agree. There's not a barrier if you're white. There is anyone can apply. Anyone can apply for the process. As I understand it, they are encouraging those from minority backgrounds to apply. And then what they're doing is when the application process is coming in, absolutely everybody and anybody that applies goes through the same process together. And therefore, it's not discriminatory.
Why can't they encourage more people from ethnic minorities to apply? Brilliant. And then just choose the best candidates. Why do they have to go through that process at the same time, and I quote, temporarily blocking applications from white British candidates? You can encourage more ethnic minorities and you can encourage excellence without blocking white people.
If they were doing anything wrong, which was racist or sexist or discriminatory, I'd be the first to say I agree with that. As I understand as I understand it, the HMIC, Fire and Rescue Services, did do a review of the force, and they were very satisfied that they'd been complying. And I'll tell you something else. In 2023-2024, they had 18.8% of minority officers apply and successful. That includes PCSOs. In the same year, 6.8% actually left that force from minority backgrounds. The force does need to recruit and be representative of the communities. I absolutely support those officers being supported under the Positive Action Programme, but I do not support positive discrimination. And that is not positive discrimination because that is a fact.
Shabnam Chaudhry, so there are more ethnic minority GPs and doctors in Britain than there are white people. If I said we need to be more representative and represent the population, we need to temporarily pause people from an Asian background becoming doctors, you'd be absolutely outraged about that. You wouldn't say that was representative. You would say it's racist. Why isn't this racist?
I wouldn't say that actually, Martin. You might think that some people would say that, but I wouldn't say that. What I would say is if there needs to be representation of any background within any organisation, whether it's a public sector or whether it's a job, this isn't something new. This has been going on for decades. This actually goes on actually in the Metropolitan Police, as I recall in the past, when they do have positive action programmes to recruit and encourage people from minority backgrounds to join policing. And if that's the same situation within the NHS or any other process or other organisation, then I wholeheartedly support it. I don't support people that are being accepted based on their race and gender because they want to put backsides on seats, so to speak, but I do encourage that it's done purely on merit and on selection that is appropriate, ethical and professional.
I absolutely agree it should be on merit. This isn't. It excludes white people. It's anti-meritocracy. It's pro-diversity. It's the opposite of equality and inclusion. But we have to end the conversation there. Shabnam, we have to move on. Thanks for your time today. Thank you. Now, a spokesman from West Yorkshire Police said this: West Yorkshire Police doesn't discriminate in its recruitment process, and we fully support its efforts to diversify the force. This notion they've decided to temporarily block applications from white candidates. Do you think that's racist?
I do think it's racist. And when you categorise people, as they said, the whistleblower said that they categorise people as gold, silver and bronze. Bronze was right at the bottom, and that was white people. So you put in, if you start categorising people, one's first, one's third, it's never going to look good. And when are we going to get to the state that Martin Luther King sold us about? Content of character rather than colour of skin. And you alluded to it. In my police career, I never had anybody say to me, do you know what, I didn't like the colour, sex or sexuality of the officer who came to help me. What they said to me was, I got a poor service, my burglary wasn't investigated, my car was broken into. This didn't matter if they were black, white, gay, straight, fat or thin, they just wanted a good service. And West Yorkshire Police, for example, every police force is inspected. And they were inspected last year and they were told, you have to improve your investigation of crime. They're solving less than 5% of crimes. And so the focus of West Yorkshire Police should be on that. There's a real disconnect between the senior officers, who are part of the establishment really, and what the public want. The vast majority of the public would want them to focus on crime and catching thieves, burglars, robbers and rapists.
Would you welcome a Donald Trump-style bonfire of diversity, equity and inclusion in British police? Because so many people are looking at this and saying, you can say, oh, it's positive action. We need better candidates from every background. I agree. Let's just get the best coppers. No one gives a monkeys about their skin colour. You would think, except the people in charge.
Well, if you look at the Metropolitan Police are saying, I just heard they're cutting 1,700 officers or staff, yet they're still maintaining a commander, a very senior officer, as well as chief superintendent, and 20 or more staff in a diversity directorate. What would the people of London want? If they were asked, what would you want those officers to do? I'm sure they would want them focused on gripping violent crime, stopping violence against women and girls, reducing theft, robbery, burglary and everything else.
Adam Cherry, politically, do you think this is just the tip of the iceberg? Are we in for 4.5 more years of this sort of business? I mean, people might want a Donald Trump-style siding of this. It seems unlikely under the Labour Party. They seem to be at the bequest, do they not, of the humanitarian lawyers?
I think this is a problem on both sides of the aisle, actually. A lot of this spawned under the last government, in the last 14 years. I've talked to you about this, not with regards to the police, but the NHS, for example, where there's a lot of this sort of stuff, where diversity officer jobs. If you go on the NHS website and Google it now, you'll find 5 or 10 or more. It happens all the time. And it was Wes Streeting who said, a lot of this is nonsense and we need to pare this back. This is not in the interest of the taxpayer. So clearly at a cabinet level, there is an interest, at least rhetorically, of stepping back from this. I think within the public sentiment on this is quite strong as well. I've already talked about that. So, they've got to walk the walk. They're talking the talk. But I think stuff like this is infuriating. You're right. If you call 999 and you've got a serious crime to report, you don't care whether they're gay, straight, this, that. It's just totally irrelevant.
Yeah, and Mike Neville, getting back to these 13,000 extra bobbies on the beat, you've been a copper for a long time. are these like fresh people, mustered up from nowhere, no rippling muscles, new candidates primed to go, or are they rearranging the numbers from elsewhere? Is this a bit of smoke and mirrors?
Well, there's lies, damn lies, and statistics, or there's government figures, isn't there? And if you look at the Metropolitan Police, for example, not only are they getting rid of these 700 people, they had a very successful Safer Schools project where 300 officers worked in schools where there's lots of violence, knives, and what they've simply done is taken them out of the schools against the headmasters and headmistresses' desires, and they put that 300 into this neighbourhood policing. So basically they're robbing Peter to pay Paul. There are no extra officers doing this. And the trouble is all the time is that once an officer's out on the street, on the beat, if they make an arrest, the paperwork and all the administration is such that they're not on the street for another 8 hours. And so it really is scandalous. The public are being duped, as ever, by politicians telling them one thing and doing another.
And the Royal Parks Police as well, Parks Police. A huge amount of crime happens in parks, particularly in London, because guess what? Tourists are targeted by gangs, organised gangs, often foreign gangs, Albanians, Romanians, Bulgarians. In Westminster, outside here, there's the most street crime in all of Britain. You see it all the time. People having their phones pinched, there are pickpockets left, right and centre. They're getting rid of those coppers.
Well, it's not just those officers who do a very good job, but it's also things like the mounted badge. You see how effective the officers on horses when they're dealing with the riots and football crowds, but also the dog patrol. I mean, they're useful. When a villain runs away, the dog is the best thing to draw them out because no one wants the dog set on them, and what it sends a message that the public are not being listened to. They're supposed to elect these police and crime commissioners or the mayor in London, and they're supposed to reflect what the public want. But they just carry on reflecting what the establishment likes. Because they want diversity, but they don't want diversity of thought. They all think the same way.
And meanwhile, Bobby on the beat is probably about as likely around my manor as Lord Luke. And Mike Neville, Adam Cherry, always an absolute pleasure. Mike Nago, thank you very much. Now, the Home Secretary, Yvette Cooper, has said this in response. All police forces need to make sure that they have proper, fair recruitment arrangements in place. Often, lots of organisations do encourage more applications from underrepresented groups. But they also have to make sure that the actual decision-making, the recruitment process is fair and is making sure that it's about getting the best possible candidates into the sorts of jobs that they have.